All right, let's talk to Karen Bartuch from the Women's Tactical Association. Karen, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. I got to tell you, listen, I just think with your background right now, I think every media outlet in America should be talking to you and finding out what you think. You are a mom, correct?
Yes, sir.
Law enforcement officer?
Yes, sir.
Law enforcement trainer?
Yes, sir.
And you actually train officers on how to deal with spree shooters?
Absolutely. Active shooter is one of the programs that the WTA teaches.
Okay. So, with that as your background, I got to ask you, before we even talk specifically about what the NRA said today, what's been going through your mind over the past week?
Well, as all of those things, a mom, a police officer, the events of last Friday broke my heart. And, you know, the time for hyperbole and debate is over, and it's time to act. And so I really applaud the NRA for stepping up and really coming forth with action, things that we can do now to make positive change.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit here. I'm looking at a story from Boston.com. This is James Allen Fox, who writes the Crime and Punishment blog, and he says the NRA's flawed strategy. So he says, quote, "Never mind that most school homicides are perpetrated by insiders, typically disgruntled students, not deranged strangers. Never mind that thousands of schools already have sworn police officers on site," which, by the way, Karen, I got to say, that seems like an argument in favor of more armed security, not in opposition to it.
Yeah.
He says Columbine High School, in fact, had a school resource officer on duty the day in 1999 when two alienated adolescents turned their school into a war zone. Of course, Columbine, he says, was a fairly large campus with nearly 2,000 students enrolled, and the cop couldn't be everywhere at once. Should Columbine have employed a small army to patrol the entrances and hallways? So let's talk about that. I've heard a number of people bring this up, Karen. You know, there was a guy with a gun, a sheriff's deputy with a gun there at Columbine, and he couldn't prevent the killing. What do you say as a law enforcement officer to that?
Well, there was also a gun ban in place at the time of Columbine, but that didn't seem to do much. There was an assault weapons ban and a large magazine ban, and that didn't seem to do much to stop those offenders from going in and wanting to do harm. But as a law enforcement officer, yeah, we can't. I mean, the reality is we can't be everywhere at once. And, you know, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. So it is better to have responsible, trained citizens out there that take their safety, you know, and think of their safety as important. So the more people that are armed out there, more good guys that are armed, as Wayne LaPierre said, I think the better off we are.
Yeah, and it should be noted as well, I don't think James Allen Fox noted this, but the deputy there at Columbine did engage these shooters. They moved away. The deputy made a decision, I believe, to help start evacuating students. He did not know where they had gone, and so he switched gears and started getting students out of the building. So to say that, you know, the deputy didn't do anything, I have to say, Karen, I think we're looking... I think we have a lot of people right now who are looking for reasons to not like this.
Yeah, and, you know, back when Columbine happened, the police response, there was a different school of thought. The thinking was more that you would wait until SWAT or specialized teams arrived, and that thinking has changed. We now go directly to the shots. We don't wait for SWAT to arrive. We don't wait for more cars to arrive. You go right to the shots. So things were a little different back then. So, I mean, we could Monday morning quarterback it all day, but there were different policies and training mindsets in place at that time. So, I mean, the person that was there, hopefully he did as much as he could, but yeah, it was a little different time.
All right, I'm just going to quote James Allen Fox again here. Notwithstanding the cruelty of last week's shooting spree at Sandy Hook and a handful of other deadly incidents involving active shooters, be they angry students seeking payback or deranged adults looking to hurt society in the most profound way, these are exceptionally rare events. Transforming our schools into armed fortresses hardly provides a comfortable and carefree learning environment with its constant reminder that children have targets on their backs.
And I got to say to that, I just think that denial here is the enemy. People just don't want to accept that there are bad people in the world. And if we had a crystal ball and could predict when these events would occur, it would be fine to not have armed citizens or security in the schools, but that's just not the world that we live in. We need to adapt to the threat that's out there. And the only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
You know, and it's interesting. I got to say, Karen, it's interesting too, because we heard a lot of people earlier this week say, you know, look, we've got whatever it takes to protect our kids. That's what we've got to do. And then here's a plan that, you know, Gallup did a poll showing more than 50%. This was before the NRA talked about this, but more than 50% support the idea of having additional police officers in our schools. Not to mention the support for the idea of perhaps having armed, trained staff or volunteers. You know, the School Shield program that the NRA mentioned here. We like this as parents. We understand that this actually will do things to keep our kids safe. And the idea of transforming our schools into armed fortresses, you know, as I pointed out, we already have armed security in about 28,000 of our schools. So it seems like we've thought it's a good. We think it's a good idea at least some of the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And my experience with officers in schools is that they become more than just an armed security presence. They become mentors. They become role models for the students. So it's more than just them standing guard with a rifle slung around their back. It's more than that.
From what you know of the men and women that you work with in the law enforcement community, Karen, let's say that you know, the National Model School Shield program gets up and running. There's a way for active or retired law enforcement to, you know, get certified, to volunteer or donate some of their time. Do you think this is something that police officers would do? Would give up some of their time to stand guard at a school?
Absolutely, 100%. Before the NRA even came out with a statement, myself and other professionals in the tactical community were getting together to do a very similar program, just to get together, volunteer our time, maybe do some sort of a parent patrol where we rotated shifts. And I put it out on Facebook, and the response was overwhelming. People all over the country want to know how they can help. They just, at this point, some people don't know how to help, so I'm glad that the NRA is providing direction on how people can help, because there are tons of people that just want to be able to do something.
Absolutely. And you know, that's the thing. You know, when Wayne LaPierre said, you know, in essence, don't wait for Washington, D.C. to do this. We can do this now. I think that is such an important point, Karen, that we have. These are our kids. These are our schools. And we don't have to wait for people in Washington, D.C. to try to do something. We can go ahead and start doing something now. We can act to protect our kids.
Yeah, and quite frankly, it's our responsibility to do so.
If you don't mind me asking, I mean, what are you hearing? You live in Illinois, outside of Chicago, where Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who told gang members earlier this year to shoot each other in alleyways instead of streets, says that the NRA's proposal is, quote, outrageous and unsettling. I'm just curious, I mean, what are you hearing from people, even before the NRA announcement? Is this something that people were talking about?
Yeah, definitely. This is, especially in the law enforcement community, which I would say is probably 95% in favor of what the NRA is proposing. Most people in law enforcement get it. They understand that there's a threat out there and that we need more sheepdogs, if you will, to prevent, you know, attacks from the wolf. So they get it. They understand that this needs to happen. And clearly Washington has not done anything except take funding away from security programs and school safety programs. So we need to do something today.
I saw a story from policemag.com. They did a reader survey of 590 law enforcement officers who were asked about restricting the sale of quote-unquote assault weapons, whether or not that would reduce the number of mass murder incidents like what we saw last week in Connecticut. 84% of those officers said no, a quote-unquote assault weapons ban would not help in reducing these types of incidents. Only 3% said that they believed that their minds had changed because of what happened in Newtown, and that they thought that a ban would be effective. You know, I don't know about 85% of the officers, but I'm curious as well. Has this been talked about, the idea of, you know, a gun ban or magazine-size bans or an into private firearms transactions, which aren't even allowed in Illinois right now, right?
Right, and I don't want to speak for the entire law enforcement community, but I would say that most officers do not want to see any sort of a gun ban as a result of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's commiserate with what we're seeing here. And I guess, Karen, where do you want to see the conversation and the action go from here? I mean, what would your advice be to moms and dads out there who are concerned, who want to make sure that their kids are safe in the new year?
And it goes back to what I always am preaching about, and that's education and training. The more that they can get exposed to the things that the NRA is doing or the Women's Tactical Association is doing, and they can learn about ways to protect themselves and start to change their mindset and break out of that liberal mindset, I think we're going to be a lot better off.
Well, listen, Karen, I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight with your perspective. If folks want to learn more about the Women's Tactical Association, how do they find you?
Facebook, Women's Tactical, and womenstactical.org.
All right, Karen, thank you so much. Have a very Merry Christmas, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Great, thanks. You guys too. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you. Karen Bartuch joining us with the Women's Tactical Association here tonight.